Okay, I'm gonna be completely transparent with y'all right now, because this one genuinely shook me. And I mean shook me in a way that I have not been shaken in a very, very long time on this channel. I was not planning to make this video. I had a whole different lineup ready to go. Completely different topics, completely different energy. And then March 8 happened, and I sat in my chair, and I read what went down, and I looked at my phone, and I looked at the screen, and I said, nah, we gotta talk about this. We have to talk about this. Because if we don't, who will? And yes, I already know the comment section is going to be a war zone. I already know there are people who have been coming here screaming conspiracy theorists, and you're reaching in all that beautiful, predictable noise. That's fine. I love that for them. But we're going to deal in facts today. We're going to deal in timelines. We're going to deal in court documents, police reports, dispatch audio, and direct quotes. And if the facts make some people uncomfortable, well, that's kind of the point, isn't it? Now, there's something I probably shouldn't tell you this early in the video, but I'm going to tell you anyway, because that's what we do here. The woman who fired those shots, she had a documented legal dispute involving Live Nation, the same Live Nation that is currently under a federal antitrust case from the Department of Justice. The same Live Nation that is deeply intertwined with the entertainment infrastructure surrounding one Robin Rihanna Fenty. Now, I'm not telling you what to think. I'm telling you what exists in public court records. And you can draw whatever conclusion you want from that. Hold on, say it with me. Y'all already know the words. Now, let's talk about what they don't want you to see. Because in this video, we are going everywhere. We're going into the shooting itself, the dispatch audio, the police report that just dropped 3 days ago, the fact that approximately 20 rounds were fired and not the 10 we were originally told. We're going into Ivana Ortiz, her social media spiral, her bizarre courtroom statement, the wig, the rifle, the two 30-round magazines. We're going into why Katt Williams clips from years ago are suddenly getting millions of views again, and why his framework for how this industry operates maps onto this case in a way that should make every single person watching this deeply uncomfortable. And then we're going to zoom all the way out and ask the question that nobody in mainstream media has the courage to ask in a post-Diddy world. Is just a crazy fan really a good enough explanation anymore? If you're ready to see all of this unfold, leave that like right now. If you're part of the family, you already know that like fuels the algorithm and gets this in front of more people who deserve to hear it. From the shooting to the courtroom, to the Katt Williams connection, to what this means for Rihanna's safety and the industry at large. We have so much to get into today. We can't waste another second. There's too much to cover. Let's get into this right now. And here we go again. Another massive, terrifying, and deeply suspicious event involving one of the biggest artists on the planet. And the mainstream media wants to wrap it up with a little bow and shove it in the mentally unstable fan drawer and call it a day. Slop, deflection, and convenience. That's the 3-course meal they keep trying to serve us. But today, we're cooking our own meal, and it's going to be a lot harder to digest for the people who don't want the full story out there. So, let's set the table properly. March 8, 2026, a Sunday afternoon, approximately 1:20 p.m. Beverly Crest, Los Angeles. Not Beverly Hills proper, but the surrounding area, one of the most exclusive zip codes in the entire United States. Rihanna's home. And here's the part that I need you to really sit with, because this detail alone changes everything about how you should be processing this story. Rihanna was not inside her main house. She and A$AP Rocky were inside an Airstream trailer, basically a metal camper, parked on their property. Rocky was sleeping. Rihanna was awake. And according to the LAPD police report that was made public just 3 days ago on March 25th as part of court filing, Rihanna told detectives that she suddenly heard approximately 10 loud sounds like something banging on metal. That's a direct quote from the police report. She grabs Rocky out of bed. She tells him they're being shot at. She pushes both of them to the ground. And then, when the shooting stops, they both run. They run from the trailer to the main house to check on their children. Let that marinate for a second. A billionaire, one of the most famous women on the face of the earth. A mother of 3, RZA, Riot Rose, and baby Rocky, running across her own property to make sure her babies are alive after someone opened fire on them. Rihanna's mother was in that house. 2 staff members were in that house. 2 neighbors in adjacent properties are listed as victims in the criminal complaint because bullets struck their homes too. And here's the kicker from the updated reports. It wasn't 10 rounds. The DA's office, Deputy District Attorney Alexander Bott, stated in court on March 25th that approximately 20 rounds were fired. 20, not 10. The original reporting said 10. The dispatch audio referenced 10. But the prosecution is now saying the number is close to 20. So either the initial count was wrong, or additional rounds were discovered in the subsequent investigation. Either way, the scale of this attack just doubled, and barely anyone is talking about that discrepancy. Now, the police report also confirmed something else. 3 bullet impacts struck the Airstream directly, the windshield and the side of the trailer. The report says that none of the rounds fully penetrated the vehicle. Do you understand the implication of that? If that Airstream had been made of thinner material, if those rounds had hit at a slightly different angle, if the weapon had been positioned 6 inches differently, we are talking about a completely different story. We're talking about tragedy. We're talking about funerals. We're talking about the biggest music story of the decade. And yet the initial media framing was what? Unstable fan. Lone wolf. Case closed. Nah, case very much open. Because the details don't add up to a simple, neat little narrative. And the more you look at the details, the more the neat little narrative, and that's what I'm calling from now on, the neat little narrative, starts crumbling. So let me give you the neat little narrative first, because you deserve to hear the official version before I start pulling threads. The LAPD says Ivana Lizette Ortiz, 35 years old, a licensed speech pathologist from Orlando, Florida, drove a white Tesla Model 3 up to Rihanna's property, exited the vehicle, or fired from the vehicle. This part is still not entirely clear, and discharged a Springfield Armory AR-15 style rifle to home the Airstream and surrounding structures. She then allegedly fled the scene, driving northbound to the canyon, before being tracked by an LAPD helicopter to a mall parking garage in Sherman Oaks, approximately 7 to 8 miles away, where she was arrested by patrol units roughly 30 minutes later. When she was taken into custody, police found a rifle and 2 30-round magazines on her person or in the vehicle. They also reportedly found a wig. A wig. The prosecution stated in court that she had a wig for a disguise. Now, why? If this is just a spontaneous mental break, does the shooter have a disguise? That's not impulse. That's planning. That is premeditation. And the DA agrees. The criminal complaint specifically alleges that the attack was, quote, willful, deliberate, and premeditated. She's been charged with 1 count of attempted murder, 10 felony counts of assault with a semi-automatic firearm, 1 for each person who was on properties during the shooting, and 3 felony counts of shooting at an inhabited dwelling or camper. Her bail was initially reported at $10 million, then adjusted to $1.875 million. And on March 25th, just 3 days ago, she appeared in court in a yellow jail jumper, blonde hair tied back, and through her public defender, Deputy Public Defender Derek Dillman. She pleaded not guilty to all 14 charges. But here's the moment that sent a chill down my spine. According to police report, right after she was arrested, Ortiz asked the investigators, and I'm quoting directly here, "Can I say one sentence? I would like to say that I wasn't attempting murder, but that's all I wanted to say. I wasn't attempting murder. 20 rounds, an AR-15, a disguised wig, 2 30-round magazines, a direct beeline to a billionaire's home with 3 children inside. But sure, she wasn't attempting murder. And the thing is, I actually think she might believe that. And that, to me, is the scariest part of this entire story, because it suggests that in her mind, she had a different objective. And what that objective actually was, well, that's the question that nobody can answer yet, and that should keep you up at night. Now, let's talk about who Ivana Ortiz actually is, because the deeper you go into her digital footprint, the more disturbing and the more confusing this whole thing becomes. And I want to be very clear here. I'm not diagnosing this woman. I'm not a psychiatrist. But what I'm about to describe to you is publicly available information from her own social media accounts, and it paints a picture that goes far beyond obsessed fan. Ortiz had been posting about Rihanna for months, not casually, not in the way a fan posts about an artist they admire or even one they dislike. This was obsessive, religious, and at times, genuinely frightening. In a video posted on January 4th, 2 full months before the shooting, she directly addresses Rihanna and says, and I'm quoting, "Listen, Rihanna, when you die, God is taking me to my future. You want to kill me? Shut the F up." She calls Rihanna a witch. She calls herself a watchman. She references spiritual warfare, demonic forces, and what she describes as energy theft. She held 60 consecutive days of daily prayer sessions on her YouTube channel, where she talked about enemies, about the devil, about people who want to destroy beautiful things. On Facebook, she tagged Rihanna directly. On February 23rd, 2 weeks before the shooting, she wrote, and I'm quoting from her post, "Are you there? Because I was waiting for yourself to say something to me directly instead of sneaking around like you talking to me where I'm not at. This woman believed she was in direct communication with Rihanna. She believed Rihanna was persecuting her. She believed Rihanna wanted to kill her. And then she drove from Orlando, Florida to Beverly Crest, Los Angeles with a legally owned rifle and 2 loaded magazines and fired 20 rounds at her house. But hold on, because what comes next is even wilder. She also had videos talking directly to Cardi B. Listen, I'm not making this up. There's a video of her recording herself, talking to Cardi B like they're in a conversation, saying, "You can't F with me, Cardi B. You're supposedly busy right now. But you know who has the cutest outfit tonight? I am. I'm the cutest tonight." This is not normal fan behavior. This is someone who has completely disconnected from reality. She's taking parasocial relationships, the one-sided connections that fans form with celebrities, and she's turned them into something violent, delusional, and ultimately deadly. Or nearly deadly. And then there's the Billie Eilish connection, and honestly, this one is so strange that when I first read it, I thought it was a parody. In October 2025, Ivana Ortiz, the same woman who would go on to fire an AR-15 at Rihanna's house 5 months later, filed an emergency petition in Florida court against Live Nation, the city of Orlando, and the Kia Center, seeking to stop a Billie Eilish concert from happening. Her complaint alleged that she would suffer immediate and irreparable harm if the concert proceeded, citing noise concerns and traffic issues. She sought damages of $75,000 to $100,000. The court dismissed the petition weeks later. Now, the conspiracy-minded folks online immediately seized on a Live Nation connection. They said, "Look, this woman had a prior legal dispute with the same entertainment conglomerate that is deeply connected to Roc Nation, which manages Rihanna's touring business. The same Live Nation that was facing a massive antitrust lawsuit from the Department of Justice. And they started building a theory that Ortiz wasn't acting alone, that she was a pawn, a patsy, a useful disturbance deployed by forces much larger than herself." Now, let me be honest with you. And here's where I'm going to separate myself from the pure conspiracy crowd, because I think it's important to be real. The Live Nation connection, when you actually look at it, was a nuisance lawsuit about concert noise. It was not a deep corporate entanglement. It was not a secret financial relationship. It was a mentally unstable woman filing a frivolous legal complaint, which is something that happens in courts across this country every single day. That doesn't make her a corporate operative. It makes her someone who has a pattern of erratic legal and interpersonal behavior. And this is a massive but, the fact that she had any touch point with the Live Nation ecosystem at all, combined with the other strange details in this case, is why the internet went where it went. Because, in isolation, any one of these details is explainable. The Live Nation suit? Frivolous. The wig? Maybe she was paranoid about being identified. The 20 rounds versus 10? Could be a counting discrepancy. The social media rants? Classic erotomanic delusion, a well-documented psychological phenomenon where someone becomes convinced a celebrity is in love with them or, in this case, persecuting them. But when you stack all of these details together, the premeditation, the cross-country travel, the disguise, the high-powered weapon, the 30-round magazines, the months of escalating content, the Live Nation filing, and the fact that every single member of Rihanna's immediate family was on that property when those shots were fired, the neat little narrative starts looking real shaky. And that's not conspiracy. That's pattern recognition. Let me also address the dispatch audio detail that is absolutely blown up online, because this is the one that has people losing their minds. When the LAPD first dispatched units to the scene, the initial radio communication described the person fleeing the Tesla as, and listen carefully, a passenger, using language that some listeners have interpreted as describing a male occupant. People online ran with this immediately. There was a man in the car. She wasn't alone. Who was driving? Now, here's what I'll say about this. Dispatch audio in the heat of an active shooter situation is chaotic, fragmented, and often inaccurate. Witnesses give wrong descriptions. Dispatchers relay garbled information. It happens. The LAPD has not publicly addressed this discrepancy, and Ortiz was the only person arrested and charged. So as of right now, there is zero evidence that a second person was in that vehicle. But the fact that the police haven't clarified the specific detail in a case where they've been very thorough about every other detail does leave an open question. And open questions, in a case as high profile, are fuel for exactly the kind of discourse we're seeing. And honestly, I'm a little tired of talking about Ivana Ortiz specifically, because I think fixating too hard on her social media, her delusions, her filings, actually distract from the bigger and far more important question. And that bigger question is the one that Katt Williams, yes, that Katt Williams, has been asking for years, And it's the question that made his old interview clips go viral the second this story broke. But before we get there, let me take a breath and say something personal for a second. As someone who covers this culture every single day, this one hit different. I'm not going to lie to you. When I read that Rihanna's children were on that property, RZA, Riot, and Baby Rocky, and that bullet struck the trailer their mother was sitting in, something in my chest just went tight. Because we can talk about industry politics and corporate machinations all day long, and we will, but at the end of the day, there were children in that house. Real, living, breathing children, and no theory, no framework, no commentary justifies minimizing that. Okay, now let me tell you what Katt Williams said, because everything that is really important about the cultural response to this incident centers around one man, and one man only, and it's a comedian that half the industry wishes would just shut up and go away. And once again, here's what they didn't want you to see. For years, Katt Williams has been the most polarizing figure in entertainment commentary, not because he's wrong, but because people can't decide if he's a genius or a madman, and increasingly, the answer seems to be a little bit of both. But after the Diddy arrest, after federal raids, after the depositions, after everything we saw unfold in 2024 and 2025, a lot of what Katt Williams said over the years has been vindicated. Not all of it, but enough of it to make you pay very close attention when he speaks. And in one of his most cited interviews, Williams laid out a framework that the internet has now applied directly to the Rihanna shooting. I want to read you his exact words, because they are chilling in this context. Now, do you hear what he's really saying there? Because if you read between the lines, this isn't just a comedian ranting. This is a man laying out an economic model. He's saying that in the music industry, there are scenarios where the death or removal of an artist is not a tragedy for corporation. It's a business optimization. The contracts disappear. The royalty obligations change. The brand lives on, but the human being with demands, with leverage, with lawyers, with opinions, that person is gone. And whoever is left standing, the estate, the family, the mama, as he puts it, gets a fraction of what the artist would have fought for. And Williams goes further. He says these incidents are designed to look random. A mentally unstable person, a tragic accident, a fan who went too far. But underneath, he claims, there's always a financial beneficiary. Always. Now, I need to be very careful here, and I'm going to be, because Katt Williams did not specifically name Rihanna in this context. Not in any verified clip that I have found. What he laid out was a general framework, a lens through which he views the entire music industry. And what the internet has done is take that framework and apply it to the Rihanna shooting. And when they do, the parallels are, frankly, uncomfortable. Think about it. Rihanna is worth an estimated $1.4 billion as of 2026. Forbes has her as the wealthiest female musician on the planet. Her primary wealth comes not from music, but from her 50% ownership stake in Fenty Beauty, which is valued at $2.8 billion, plus her Savage X Fenty lingerie line. She is no longer just an artist under a label. She is a mogul. She is a competitor. She has leverage. She has independence. And in Williams' framework, that's precisely when things get dangerous. Because the more independent an artist becomes, the more leverage they accumulate, the more threatening they are to the existing power structure. Prince fought with his label and wrote "slave" on his face. Michael Jackson was allegedly preparing to expose industry corruption before he died. Nipsey Hussle was building economic independence in his community. And now Rihanna, who has transcended the music industry entirely and become a brand unto herself, has bullets hitting her airstream while her babies sleep inside. Is that a coincidence? In the Williams framework, there are no coincidences. There are only events that benefit someone. Now, I want to be very clear about something, because I know people are going to clip this section out of context. I am not saying that anyone in the music industry sent Ivana or Tease to shoot at Rihanna's house. There is zero evidence of that. None. The LAPD has not suggested it. The DA's office has not suggested it. Ortiz's own extensive social media history strongly suggests that she was acting out of delusional, erotomanic obsession, not corporate instruction. But, and this is the part that actually matters, the reason conspiracy theories gain so much traction so quickly is not because people are stupid. It's because the music industry spent decades earning this level of distrust. When you lie to people for 40 years about how artists are treated, how contracts are structured, how decisions are made, how people disappear. When Diddy's entire empire of horror was hiding in plain sight while executives looked the other way, you don't get act surprised when people hear random crazy fan and say, "I don't believe you." That's not irresponsible. That's the consequence of an industry that has obliterated its own credibility. Katt Williams didn't create that distrust. He just narrated it out loud. Let me zoom out for a second, because I think what's happening with this story is actually a perfect case study in where we are as a culture right now. And it's not all good. We are living in what I call the post-trust era. The Diddy revelations, the Epstein connections, the institutional failures across entertainment, politics, finance. All of it has created a public that, quite reasonably, does not take official narratives at face value anymore. And in most cases, that skepticism is healthy. It's necessary. It's how corruption gets exposed and how powerful people are held accountable. But there's a shadow side to that skepticism, and we need to be honest about it. Because when skepticism becomes a default for every story, regardless of the evidence, you end up in a place where a genuinely mentally ill woman can fire 20 rounds at a celebrity's house, and half the internet refuses to believe she acted alone. Not because there's evidence of conspiracy, but because believing in conspiracies has become a cultural reflex. And that's dangerous too. I've covered this industry long enough to know that real conspiracies do exist. They're documented. They're prosecuted. They're in court records. But I also know that mental illness is real. Celebrity stalking is a well-documented phenomenon, and sometimes the simplest explanation is a correct one. Ariana Grande has dealt with stalkers. Justin Bieber has dealt with stalkers. Taylor Swift has dealt with stalkers who showed up with weapons. This is tragically a known has her fame at this level. The historical parallels are instructive here. In 1981, John Hinckley Jr. shot President Reagan because he was obsessed with Jodie Foster. No conspiracy, no corporate handler, just a deeply disturbed man acting on delusion. In 1980, Mark David Chapman shot John Lennon outside his apartment building. The conspiracy theories around that case persist to this day, but the documented evidence points to a lone, delusional individual. Does the music industry have a dark history of exploiting, manipulating, and discarding artists? Absolutely. Without question, that's not a conspiracy theory. It's a business model. But does that mean every violent incident involving a celebrity is an inside job? No. And I think intellectual honesty requires us to hold both of those truths at the same time. What Katt Williams does brilliantly, and I'll give him credit for this, is force people to ask questions that institutions would prefer they didn't ask. Who benefits is never a bad question. Is the official story complete? Is never a bad question. What are they telling us? Is never a bad question. But the answers to those questions aren't always sinister. Sometimes the answer to who benefits is nobody. Sometimes the answer to is the official story complete is yes, actually it is. And sometimes the answer to what aren't they telling us is nothing. They're telling us everything. And it's just really sad and really scary and really hard to accept. The nuance I want to leave you with on this point is this. We can honor Katt Williams' framework and his courage in speaking out about real industry corruption, while also acknowledging that not every framework applies to every situation. We can be skeptical of official narratives without being reflexively conspiratorial. We can demand transparency and accountability from institutions without turning every tragedy into a thriller plot. The goal should be truth, wherever it leads, even if it leads somewhere boring. Even if it leads somewhere that doesn't make for a good YouTube title. But here's where I'll push back on the nothing to see here crowd, because this part is important too. The reason Katt Williams' framework resonated so deeply with this case isn't because people are gullible. It's because there are legitimate unanswered questions. Why did Ortiz have a wig? If this was truly a spontaneous mental break, why the disguise? How did a woman from Orlando plan, finance, and execute a cross-country trip with a weapon without anyone in her life flagging it? Her estranged husband knew she was spiraling. He received an email from her in January demanding that he renounce Rihanna. Was any intervention attempted? Were authorities contacted? And why has her bail been set at $1.875 million for what the DA himself described as conduct that could have easily resulted in multiple homicides? Defense attorneys have already requested reduction to $70,000. $70,000 for an attempted murder case involving a billionaire, 3 children, and a semi-automatic rifle. In what world is that proportionate? These are not conspiracy questions. These are criminal justice questions, and they deserve answers. So let me land this plane, because I know I've taken you through a lot today, and I want to make sure the thesis is crystal clear. What happened on March 8th, 2026 at Rihanna's Beverly Crest home was a terrifying, premeditated attack that could have killed one of the most important artists of our generation, her partner, her children, and her mother. That is confirmed, undeniable, and should be the foundation of every conversation about this case. Ivana Lizette Ortiz has pleaded not guilty to 14 felony charges and faces life in prison if convicted. The evidence against her, The weapon, the magazines, the wig, the dispatched audio, the months of social media documentation. Her own statement to police is overwhelming. The Katt Williams connection is not about a specific accusation. It's about a framework, a way of seeing the music industry that, after the Diddy revelations, after decades of documented exploitation, carries a weight and a resonance that it didn't carry 5 years ago. Williams' clips went viral because people are primed to question official narratives, and because some of the details in this case, the Live Nation filing, the dispatched audio discrepancy, the disguise, the meticulous planning, make the lone, unstable fan narrative feel incomplete to a lot of people. And I'm going to continue to stand firmly in this stance. You can hold space for both realities. This can be a deeply mentally ill woman who acted alone in a case that reveals systemic failures in how we protect public figures, how we handle escalating threats on social media, and how we process violence in an industry that has proven, beyond any doubt, that it is capable of extraordinary darkness. The neat little narrative that this was random, that this was isolated, that this was just one woman's delusion might be true. But even if it is, the fact that the public doesn't believe it should tell you everything you need to know about where our trust in institutions stands right now. And that erosion of trust, that's not the internet's fault. That's the industry's fault. They built that. Katt Williams just narrated it. Honestly, between the shooting, the arraignment, the police report revelations, and the absolute circus that the online discourse has become around this case, I'm exhausted. And I know you are too. But this story is not over. The trial hasn't even begun. Discovery hasn't happened. We don't know what the defense strategy will be. We don't know what additional evidence the prosecution will present. And we don't know if Ortiz will eventually cooperate with investigators in a way that reveals more about her motivations, her planning, and whether, and I stress this as an open question, not an allegation, anyone else was involved in any capacity. We're going to break down the rest of this case as it develops, including the next court date, the bail hearing dynamics, and what the California Attorney General's motion to strip Ortiz of her therapy license tells us about how seriously the state is taking this. That's all coming very soon. And if you want to see how the broader conversation about celebrity safety, the music industry's accountability crisis, and the post-Diddy culture skepticism is reshaping how we process every major entertainment story, check out the video on your end screen right now, because that context is absolutely essential to understanding everything we talk about today. This has been a heavy one. Family, I appreciate every single one of you who stayed until the end. If you're part of the family, you already know what to do. Drop that like, hit that subscribe, leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and I want to hear what you think about this case. Are you buying the neat little narrative? Or do you think there's more to this story? Stay safe, stay informed, stay questioning, and I'll see you in the next one.